Second. Hey everybody, it's Allison, the Oddball Copywriter, here for our second edition of Wednesdays with the Oddball Copywriter. And I have with us this week Melissa Szurovy. Thank you for joining us, Melissa.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
I was just telling her earlier there's a big thunderstorm brewing here, so I've done what I could to mitigate a power outage, but if it goes out, we're probably done. Being truthful.
Murphy's Law.
Yes. So Melissa has a whole list of things that she does, but I know her best because we are co-hosts together on the Unstressed Mama podcast for the last almost year. And we also went through business coaching together when we were first starting out. So that's where I met her. But she has a ton of other interesting things going on in her life that she has done. And that's why I brought her on today so she can tell us all about those things. I alluded to some of them in my intro to her, but she is super busy. And I'm going to let you tell her all about that in her own words instead of telling you on her behalf. So, Melissa, can you just start by telling us what you do on a daily basis in your life?
Absolutely. Obviously I have a business, and so I'll get to that shortly, which is how we met. But I am active duty Navy. I've been active duty for almost 18 and a half years. So I'm nearing the end of my 20 years, and then I'll be retiring from that. So I have that full-time job. Right now, my job, and for the past 7 years, has been teaching at the Naval Academy in the mathematics department. So that's my day job. In the past 7 years, I had 2 kids. They are now 6 and 4. They are both in the elementary school and pre-K and first grade. They get on a bus, and it's like the best thing ever for them to like just walk out the door and then walk home. I'm like, oh, I love this, like riding the bus thing. Because it literally saved an additional, so for a few weeks, my daughter was on the bus and my son was at a daycare, and it basically gave an additional hour back to our life to add that one extra drop off in. And so sometimes I did it, sometimes my husband did it, but like it was still collectively an hour in our life every day. So that's 5 days a week. So that's 5 hours a week we got back, which is why I'm really excited about that, because my kids are also very involved in sports. We usually have like 2 to 3 week periods where there are no sports, usually like August, and then maybe like December, January timeframe. And so currently I can wear the hat of soccer mom and gymnastics mom, although I will say, because I've been working on other things, I haven't gone to gymnastics for a few weeks. My husband has done most of that. And then on to my business. So I started it in 2019. We did work with the same business coach, and it's called Strong Mom, Strong Family. And so I started with the intent of just strength coaching, and that's kind of where my background was. I got my kettlebell certification prior to having children, so just over 7 years ago. And I just kind of felt like strength was, well, I do still believe strength is super important. And then it kind of evolved, the pandemic played a little bit into that, into running coaching as well. And so I was a runner for a very long time, got kind of burnt out with running. And April of 2020, in my strength group that I had, I was like, does anybody want to start a run club? And it was literally something that was sort of on a whim. And since then that has grown. I've created a VIP membership out of it. And I just love being able to see moms from all different phases of life, whether they're new moms or grandmoms or fur moms, embrace running. And I've brought the strength back into that. Like our September challenge is strength workouts. Like the goal was 10 workouts to kind of get the September challenge completed. So because I believe as a runner, you really should make sure you're continuing to build your strength to prevent injury and overuse issues. So
It's interesting how you got the run club going because I've known you since the beginning and it was all about kettlebells and strength training. And then I remember that you started this on a whim and got really excited about it, and it has turned into like the main focus
Yes,
of your business.
it has.
And it's a cool community, even though I haven't been super active in it lately, but I have. It has actually gotten me running, and I hate running.
But you are still a runner.
Yes, and it helped me not hate it because I could see that there were benefits to doing it, and the camaraderie was one of the biggest ones with this group of all the different kinds of moms, everyone from grandmas to new moms, and running levels from marathon runners to me who trots around the block and hopes that nobody's looking out their window when I go by.
One of the things that as it evolved, like someone would be like, oh, well, I just walk. Can I still join? And I was like, absolutely. I mean, we're looking for community for movement. I remember when I started my business, one of my first challenges was a make movement happen challenge. And so while initially I was kind of like, you need a kettlebell, like you must have this, I have evolved too that, you individuals really need to be moving. And whether that moving is going for a walk, playing tennis, running a marathon, or swinging kettlebells, you know, movement is good in any way, shape, or form. So I was, kind of shifted out of that elitist mode of it must be this way to, let's just get you moving, right? If you need help getting moving, let me try to help you get started. The other part is starting in a gradual sense and not saying, I'm going to start something new and start running 5 days a week or lifting 5 days a week, for that matter as well.
Right. But those big changes like that don't end up sticking and can sometimes get you injured.
Yeah, one of the other things that has been in the back of my mind, and it actually kind of came out, I'm working with a photographer to get some new branding photos, and it came out in kind of in that like conversation with her about how like one thing, like I'll never ask you to do a before and after photo. I'm not going to ask you to take measurements. I'm not going to ask you to like, you must do X, Y, and Z. Because life happens. And as a mom, it happens. I mean, it happens to everyone. But as a mom, obviously the number of, factors that could make something happen. 2 kids have a greater probability of being homesick with one than just one, adding in my probability piece. And that's not really that they're independent anyway. So having that flexibility within your training plan and not beating yourself up if you miss a workout or you have a bad run, and making it a positive. Allison, you just mentioned how it kind of made you not hate running, and that's the goal. I don't think anybody should run if you hate it, but I also feel like if you're thinking maybe I should run and you hate it, I would ask yourself a couple of questions. Well, why do I think I need to run? If it's like, why would you force yourself to do something you hate? It's like broccoli. I finally decided I dislike raw broccoli or like roasted broccoli. Put some cheese on it, fine, but like I don't like broccoli. And my husband was like, do you want broccoli? I'm like, no. This is about 3 months ago. I was like, I'm done eating broccoli. Unless it's mixed with a bunch of stuff, I don't want it. You can make yourself broccoli. But I don't like broccoli. I dislike it a lot. So I'm just not going to eat it anymore. And while like, yes, it's something that's good for you, it doesn't have to, you don't have to do all the good things. You
want to no longer identify as a broccoli eater.
Unless it's covered in a lot of cheese.
So let's go back, way back. What made you decide to enlist in the Navy? I don't think I've ever heard you talk about that story.
So interesting. It was kind of another on a whim thing. So I went to Penn State for my undergrad, and at the time I was accepted to Penn State. So I think it was the summer before I went. So maybe it was called Spend a Summer Day. I don't remember what the program was that I went there, and I was with both my parents. And at the time my parents were split up, not yet divorced. And I was like in state college with both my parents. I don't know, we're like flipping through booklets. And I remember the little diner, I can't remember the name, but I can see the little diner we ate at. And they were like, oh, here's this Navy ROTC. And I'm like, what is that? And it's like, oh, well, there's an opportunity for a scholarship, and they give you a stipend every month. And just a little bit of background, like I was basically putting myself through college on student loans, that I was responsible for all of them. So I was kind of like, oh, well, I mean, I like going to the beach for vacation. So this sounds like something I should try. So I had like some advising appointment that afternoon. I asked some random person, and like, oh, here, you should call this person. And it was Mrs. Shawnee Butts. She was an amazing administrative assistant at the unit while we were there. And I called her and I was like, oh, so I just saw this, like, what should I do? And so she was like, oh, well, you know, there's this orientation. And I was like, well, I'm already signed up for this engineering thing. She's like, okay, no big deal to miss the indoctrination for the program. It was kind of a big deal. But she's like, that's okay. And she said, you'll want to enroll in this one course, and there are some physical fitness requirements. You need to run 1.5 miles in 15 minutes. And she listed whatever the push-ups and the sit-ups were. And I was kind of like, oh, okay. Well, she failed. So now, mind you, I broke my leg earlier that year. So it had been like 6 months since I'd broken my leg and had major surgery. And so, but I was fine. And I haven't had any issues with it until about 3 months ago. But and it's not because of the surgery, but I was like, okay, but she didn't tell me those were like your bare minimum passing scores. Like most people were running their 1.5 miles in like 10:30 and like doing like 100 push-ups or I don't remember the push-up, 100 sit-ups in 2 minutes. And I was like, so I get there and I've already felt like very behind. And my very first command PT, we went on a big run, which was, I made it about 1/4 mile before I fell out. So like I always was kind of on this struggle with physical fitness. And the reason why I kind of fell into kettlebells is because that's what I found that helped me do something that was enjoyable and fun and get stronger, without having to spend hours in the gym. At the time I was stationed on my last ship, and being on sea duty, it was like, 12-hour days were short days. So I didn't have a whole lot of time. And when we went on deployment, we didn't have a whole lot of space. So kind of bleeding that in of why I joined the Navy was literally like, let me ask these questions. I showed up to class and I ended up picking up a scholarship after my first year. I got into a lot better physical shape after that first year. So I did avoid the freshman 15 because I didn't play sports in high school. So I ended up working out way more than the average, like increasing my activity way more than your average college student would, because I went from doing effectively nothing to doing the PT stuff that we did. And then, I knew I wasn't great at it. So I enlisted the help of some other friends within the unit to get me in better running shape and so forth. So made it through that.
Did you get to the kettlebells on your own, or were you working with somebody that helped you try that?
So I found kettlebells, shockingly, on a whim, buying books before my first deployment, and I found a DVD. I will say it was a famous person's name, and in hindsight, with the kettlebell knowledge I have, I hate to even say that I used this person. It was like a Bob Harper kettlebell DVD, and so I bought a 10-pound kettlebell, and I took it with me on deployment. So this was in 2011, and so I take it with me, and I could do these workouts in my stateroom, very small space. They were great. At one point, I asked my husband to send me a bigger bell because that was getting a little easier. So I had a 15-pound bell. And we got back from deployment. I ran 3 half marathons, and I was bigger than I had ever been, because I didn't do a whole lot of strength. 10, 15-pound weights a couple of times a week wasn't really a whole lot in what I do now. So I talked to who's the command fitness leader, and I'm like, I just don't understand. Like, I ran 3 half marathons in 7 months, and I'm getting bigger and bigger. And there's a theory, when you start running long distance all the time, your body thinks it needs to conserve energy and doesn't burn the carbs as much. So there's a thing as like fat runners. He's like, you really should start lifting heavy. And I was like, well, I do these kettlebell workouts that were like 10, 15 pounds. He's like, no, I mean like really heavy. You should try CrossFit. And no digs on CrossFit. And I will say in the past 10 years, it has improved immensely. But at the time, my personal opinion was CrossFit was cultish. And I knew people got injured in CrossFit. And I was like, I'm not sure that's really what I want. So I went and found a book. And it happened that the book that I found with the trainer, Lauren Brooks, was like 40 minutes from my house. And so I found her because I also just knew that if I were to start lifting heavier, I really needed to make sure I was using good form. And obviously there's one of those myths of using a kettlebell hurts my back. Well, yeah, if you're not using it correctly. So I met with her, did a couple of sessions with her, and then I was able to train in her home gym once a week when I was around. I would go up on the weekends. And that's when I found my kettlebell strength about 10 years ago.
I mean, how often do you find a book and then it just so happens that the author lives close and you can go meet them in person? That's pretty cool.
And I was like totally fangirling about the fact that I got to meet this person in this book that I brought. But yeah, she is an amazing person, as well as wrote an amazing book, and has since had like a bunch of DVDs for follow along, and she has an online membership as well for her members. Yeah.
So you're tooling along in the Navy and running on ships and working out in your room with a kettlebell on a ship, right?
Yep.
That's crazy. I cannot relate. Now, were you ever deployed you said you were deployed. Did you go into active duty at all?
So I was deployed 5 different times. It was always when I was on sea duty. So I was stationed on the ship, and then the ship went into theater. So I've been over to the Persian Gulf, like on the water. I've been to some ports, but I was never like boots in the sand in Iraq or in the mountains of Afghanistan.
Okay.
But one of the missions of the Navy is a forward presence. And, that's part of what we do whenever we deploy. Be out there, I don't want to say like show the flag, but show that we're, and we go into places we're allowed to go. It's not like we're sneaking in anywhere, but, in the international waters. So
interesting. I know very little about how, military strategy and how all of that works. So it's always interesting to me to hear that any details of that. And when I live near an Air Force base, so when people say they're deployed, I just assume like, oh boy, they're flying in an airplane over to somebody where they have to get out with a gun. That's what I picture with a deployment.
So that could be a deployment. There definitely are deployments like that. There's deployments that people go to, like in the United States, you can get deployed to an area. Actually, a lot of the medical service corps got deployed at the beginning of the pandemic. We have hospital ships, the medical service corps in the Navy. And so we have hospital ships that often go to underprivileged countries and kind of do humanitarian effort there. And so they actually activated, I can't remember which one. Oh no, they actually activated both on each coast. One went to LA and one went to New York. And so, short notice, a lot of people came either off like reserve duty or were moved from like their current station to be deployed to help out when we sent the hospital ships to the cities, help with overflowing hospitals. So, we can help in those situations too. I mean, that's not something I personally do. In the Navy, I was a surface warfare officer. So I personally was on just 2 destroyers and a cruiser. There's what we call our small boys. There's also amphibious ships that support marine operations. So my small boy life did not, help out in the pandemic, but
no.
They are able to provide presence and deterrence.
That's okay because you were busy helping moms not lose their sanity by going out for a run to escape their all of a sudden home 24/7 children.
Oh my gosh, I know. I know. So
You
neat.
were needed elsewhere. So it sounds, I mean, I think I've heard before that all of that experience with running and passing the test in the Navy and all of that gave you inspiration for the business that you eventually started.
Yeah, so after I found kettlebells back 2011 to 2012 timeframe, whenever I'd met the trainer I first used, it was like once I found them, I was hooked. And I was like, I want to be able to help other people. And I knew at some point I'd be getting out of the Navy. Like it is not something you literally can do forever. And so I was like, well, this is something I think I could do. I think I want to be able to help women. And then once I had my own children, I was like, oh, I need to focus on moms just because that's what I can relate to the best. And certainly I can help women who aren't moms. But I just will talk about my kids more than you probably want me to. So that's really the biggest difference there. Just to make sure that, we're on the same page. That's like, one of the things. And there's definitely some women in the run club who have not had children. And they're like, why don't kids? Can I join? I'm like, of course, you're welcome. I mean, as a community, but sometimes we might talk about mom things, just, be aware.
So. Yeah, it's kind of hard to avoid when you're a mom. It takes over almost every aspect of your life.
Just a bit.
Yeah. Everything goes back to being a mom. But the run club is fun because there's not all moms in there. I know of at least one fur mom that is a friend of mine that joined, and she fits in just fine. And I don't know if you remember back in Business Beyond Baby, I don't know if you were in at this time or not, but there was one non-mom that joined there
for a short time. Might have been before me. I don't recall that.
And it didn't end up working out for her in that setting because being a mom starting a business is light years different from being someone who isn't a mom starting a business, because you can't just come home. She would be commenting about how, she worked so hard all day and now she has to come home and work on her business and she is so tired, and there would just be silence in the group because we were all like, mm-hmm. So we still have 3.5, 4 hours of kid things to do. Then we can work on our business if we decide not to go to bed at that time. So we cannot relate to you. And it wasn't that everyone wasn't trying. It was just such a huge difference in mindset. But that doesn't happen in the run club because anybody can go for a run for 20 minutes. Most anybody, even if you have to take a stroller.
Yeah, what I find that the being a mom part amplifies more than not having children to take care of. And I think that you can say children, as long as they're living in your house, you're going to be taking care of them, because I feel like the part that gets me the most isn't the running to the soccer games or the soccer practice and bus drop-offs and all of that. It's all of the things that are in your head that take up the mind space. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that is actually my biggest struggle. It is not that I don't have time at the moment. And, people often will be like, well, you have time, but so how often are you scrolling on your phone? But there's sometimes my mind can't think anymore. I've been up since 5:30 in the morning. It's 9 o'clock at night. I just got the kids to bed and I haven't stopped all day. My mind can't keep going. Like it is already like I'm off going to sleep. And last night was an example. I tried to go read and I lay down, and as soon as my head hit the pillow and I opened my book, I was like, I don't think I can do this. Like there's just nothing left. Like, sure, those things take time, just like anyone who doesn't have kids also has things they do, friends they see, but those things don't take up the mind space, I feel like, as much as kids do. Like, because I'm constantly thinking of, is the right outfit washed and ready to go for the next game? Do they have socks for soccer? Do did I pay this? Did I register for this? Oh, don't we need to register for hockey soon? Like all these things are going through my head, like on repeat until I can get it out and check it off the list.
Yeah.
So I think that is one of the bigger things that moms specifically deal with, separate than non-moms. And we talked about this I think we talked about it with Richard Fletcher on our podcast interview. He was like, well, I just do whatever. And I'm like, oh no, I definitely have like 18,000 thoughts to do whatever. He's like, no, I just do it. We're like, I wish.
This kind of naturally leads into the other thing that you do and that we do together, the Unstressed Mama podcast.
Yes.
And that was originally your idea to put together an Unstressed Mama event, which we did 2 of them.
That was fun.
Yeah. So that's another part of your life, that something, that was your brainchild that you thought of, and is that from, carrying this mental load all the time and trying to do all these different things. And it seems like, are you crazy? You're going to add one more thing? But anybody that owns a business will know that when you start working on something as a business, you get so much better at it.
Yeah. And, you and Kelsey came up with the podcast idea. But, I had been, prior to the global pandemic, had been thinking in my head, this was another mind space thing that the business was taking over. Like, I really want to do like a retreat. Like when we did our business retreat in 2019, like just getting together, meeting people that like I knew from social media was so awesome. And I've done that before. Actually, the trainer that I worked with, Lauren Brooks, she had a do-it-yourself workout program called Be Slam, Be Strong Like a Mother, which I joined when I didn't have kids, and met a group of women that like we still stay in contact. And like some of us have met in person, some of us have gone to workshops in person. So, having that in-person community, in-person retreat of meeting people that from online is really awesome for me. And I wanted to be able to provide that to more people. And so I don't remember if I think the pandemic had happened whenever I finally was like, all right, who would like to do something? This is what I'm thinking. And, we got a couple of people to hop on, and it, obviously I think that was a huge point. Doing the podcast has made me not hate my voice anymore.
Oh, that's a good thing.
I used to cringe if I'd hear my voice on a video or whichever, but now I'm like, whatever, that's me.
Right. Yeah. You get what you get.
But, having that community, and again, with the Unstressed Mama, we have a group with that as well, that we're going to get back and be more active in that, or, revamping the podcast right now. Actually, today's episode launched the end of season 1. In 2 weeks, we'll have the start of season 2, and we're going to kind of group our episodes to be more of a series. We're going to call them seasons, but in a series that are all kind of relatable. So if you're searching kind of a topic, what should I do about X? You can kind of maybe go to this series, or we could direct you to season 7 or whatever it ends up being.
Mm-hmm. Yet another learning curve, the podcast.
I will say, surprisingly, it was not too hard to like physically make it get on air.
Right.
Like the trans piece was pretty easy.
Mm-hmm.
That was about the only easy part.
Right. I was surprised at how easy it is to upload the video, and right. I think when we were talking about starting it, my mind just shut right down, thinking about all this tech stuff and how do you do this, and it's so easy. I mean, literally anybody that has an internet connection and a phone can have a podcast if they want to.
Yeah, and with what we use, I actually did my recording, since it was just me for the episode for today. I did my recording. I used my computer, but right into the browser, where on you can do the same thing with the app on your phone. So like Allison said, a smartphone is all you need really to have a podcast, to be able to create a podcast. Clearly you need content and people to listen to it and so forth. But
yeah. So an interesting question that I got into a little bit with Manny last week that I'm going to ask you too. So with all of these things that you have going on in your life now, how would you define that you have reached a success, that you're successful?
So I can give like a wishy-washy answer. So I feel like I'm successful in a lot of ways in general, but combining it all together, I feel like when I piece it together, I have met success. I have children who are learning and growing. I have a spouse who I love and adore and enjoy spending time with. And I have a good community of friends. And I would say at 40 years old, I mean, obviously the kid piece, but like I didn't always have that. So I'm at a point where I don't feel like I need to say something or need to not say something. I feel like I'm surrounded by people who accept me for me and not expecting anything else. When all my adult life on my ship, you're like forced around these people. So you make friends with them, and some you're like friends with them, but then there's also some that you're like really good friends with. And so there's those ones that stick together, but because of the nature of the Navy, we don't all live near each other. And so, you always felt like there might be somebody who you can't always trust, where I feel like I can't ask for anything more in the terms of happiness. But I will say when it comes to like my business, there's clearly things I would like to see up and running and having a little bit more of a flow. Working that as we mentioned, the electron piece of that is a little bit of a challenge. As I'm already planning on hiring you for copywriting for my next membership launch later this fall, because that's a piece that takes a lot of my brain space. And for me, if I can have somebody like you do that for me,
right,
and alleviate that from the brain space, it makes me thinking about, launching a membership to the public in a month or two so less daunting, right? And so figuring out like those pieces of where I can, hire out, automate, and so forth, to make that business side be more self-sufficient.
Yeah, that's a good feeling. I've gotten some more of that recently than I used to have, and it's just so nice to have that. And you're right, when you talk about your friend group and whatever, I don't live near you, but from what I can see of your life, you definitely have a very enviable situation with like friends in your neighborhood and friends here. And then I participated in your 40th birthday thing this year, and that was super cool that you had a gift delivered how many days in a row?
Well, I guess technically 15, because it started 2 weeks before my birthday, and then got one on my birthday.
Yeah, that's cool that you mentioned that that's a piece of your success, because I don't know too many other people that have a really good friend group like that.
Well, and you mentioned my neighborhood. People ask like, "Oh, you're retiring from the Navy in a year and a half. Are you moving?" And I'm like, to be honest, probably not. We call them, well, a lot of ours is a Navy family, but within the neighborhood, I kind of include that as like the people that I hang out with in my neighborhood. I really enjoy being around them. And not that there's people that I don't hang out with that I wouldn't enjoy hanging around, but the ones that I do spend time with, it's not like it feels forced and like that it's an obligation. And several years ago, in a security clearance interview, they asked about neighbors. And the one house I lived in, I was on sea duty, barely home. You're like, you didn't put a neighbor address at this residence. And I'm like, because I don't know anyone. And like, you don't know the name of a neighbor? And I was like, correct. I knew no neighbors for the 3 years that I lived in that, 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 years that I lived in that house.
Yeah, we just moved out of our old house we had lived in for 15, 16 years. And I did know the name of the people that lived right next door to us, but I would have never put them down as like someone that I knew because I just knew their name and we would say hi to each other and that's it. The other people, I literally did not know their names. They just weren't friendly. They weren't interested in like having a neighborhood thing. And we've lived here for a little over a year and I know the names of two people on our street, and that's only because they have kids that are the same age as my kid. But there's no like camaraderie or anything like that here. Just
But
I don't
it's
know.
literally a reason why I don't know if we'll move from here. Just like, not just like in Annapolis where we live, but like in our specific community. Like, I mean, there are some things that would maybe make it desirable to live elsewhere, you know, that like pipe dream house on the water.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, if that was feasible, I would consider that. But like, I would be very saddened if that happened and I didn't have my friends. And we talked
Mm-hmm.
about this last summer that, you know, had I lived in my pipe dream house on the water, you know, most of the houses, like there's a community, but it's not quite the same.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how I would have actually survived the pandemic without being able to just like sit outside because you couldn't go see people, right? Sit outside, let our kids play on the street, and like wave to each other from the driveway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was literally a lifesaver to be in such a wonderful community with people that I'm friends with.
Mm-hmm.
And spend the pandemic with
Yeah.
effectively.
That's awesome. Um, so one more question before we wrap it up then. So that's your success now. When you were younger, say before you even went into the Navy, if I would have asked you the same question, what would have your answer been at that time?
Oh, when I was younger, I definitely thought success meant money. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and totally thought, like, I actually chose going to Penn State and chose getting an engineering degree because engineers made more money than CPAs, was what my mind said. Obviously didn't know enough about the world at that time, because I love numbers. I love like accounting. I like, if I had mind space, I would love to do my own taxes. Like, I still read I have an accountant who does my taxes. I still actually go read this stuff because I think it's cool. So, like, that was like my dream job, was to be a CPA, but it didn't make enough money for me. Um, and clearly, I don't even know what a value would have been back then, but didn't make enough money for me. So I needed an engineering degree because I was, you know, smart enough to be an engineering major. So I should get an engineering degree so I could make more money. Because as a youth, I equated money with happiness.
And just think, had you known, you could have skipped college altogether and just cut weird things in half on YouTube and made more than either of those professions.
Oh my gosh. You know, Allison, there was no YouTube when I was making career decisions in the late 90s.
Right. I mean, the people that don't plan ahead cut things in half on YouTube, and then the planners are doing other things.
Yeah. That's a
Oh,
great
yeah.
perspective set of questions there.
Yeah. Yeah. I really like that meme that I've seen on Facebook, or I don't even know if it's a meme, but an engagement question that everybody uses. Of, when you were younger, what did you think signified that somebody was rich?
Wow.
The answers you see, like a basketball hoop with a plexiglass back, or whatever, a sprinkler system or a swimming pool. And I always laugh at my own answers because mine's definitely a swimming pool and a boat. When I was younger, people had those. Whoa, you are big time. And now when I think of the swimming pool and the boat, they're still both things that I like, but I more think of, you gotta have a lot of money to take care of either one of those things.
Yes.
And if anybody has one, they're probably not rich because their richness is going into that item to take care of it.
And the other aspect of that, I probably would have said something like fancy new cars. Younger, like what I would have like classified someone as being rich at, or like a big house with a swimming pool. It would be another one. I didn't know about boats growing up, really being from Western Pennsylvania. There weren't too many of them around.
Yeah.
I knew they existed. I knew what a boat was. We just weren't exposed to them very much. But what you don't know when you see the people with brand new cars and huge houses is, what is their bottom line? Is it red or black? Having that kind of realization has just made me be like, it doesn't even matter to me what somebody else has or doesn't have. It's what I have and what I can create and who I can be with. That's what really matters.
Yeah, that's a great insight there. Great answer. All right. Well, that was a good talk. I think I know a lot more about you than I did before, and I've known you for quite a while.
Thank you for the opportunity, and always
Sure.
happy to share.
And if anybody wants to know more about what Melissa does, you can follow her on Instagram. You're Strong Moms at Strong Mom Strong Family, right?
Yeah, there's an underscore between mom and family.
Oh, okay.
And then on Facebook, you can see my name. That's
Yep.
how you'd find me on Facebook. And then there's the Strong Mom Run Club, which is a free Facebook group. If you're interested in moving with other mamas.
If you think there's even a chance in hell that you would ever want to run, you should join it.
Thank you.
Because that's about what I had was there's a small chance.
And you ran
a virtual 5K, yeah.
Yeah.
Woohoo.
Awesome.
All right, well, have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
And we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.